Hi, I'm Karthik Kamath. I made a video which guides you how to download, install, and use GNS3. I hope you like it, especially all the network enthusiasts over there. Thank you.
Hello friends, I'm Karthik Kamath, and in this video I'm going to explain what a graphical network simulator is, how do we download and install a graphical network simulator, and how do we use it. So let me begin with what a graphical network simulator actually is. A graphical network simulator is basically an emulator for networks, which means that using GNS3 software, you can make your own routers, you can make your own switches, and you can configure them. You can configure IP addresses on the interfaces of the router, and virtually you can make your own networks. So, for anyone who is interested in network field or even network engineers or any other professionals who are there in the network field use GNS3 a lot because this is a very cheap, easy to access, and as well as a reliable software. GNS3 website describes itself as a software that empowers network professional. Well, that's the reason because it's all about networks. It is strongly linked with Dynamips, Dynagen, and PEMO. Dynamips is basically a program that allows Cisco iOS emulation. Dynagen is a front end for Dynamips, and PEMU is a fixed firewall emulator. Uh, for those people who are interested in giving Cisco exams such as CCNA, CCNP, or even Juniper exams such as JNCIA, JNCIS, use GNS3 software to practice all the labs, and because they are very good and very realistic. They help you to troubleshoot the problem very easily, and you can understand each and every basics of the network using GNS3. GNS3 is a software which is available for all operating systems, which includes Windows, Linux, as well as macOS. GNS3 is basically dependent on few other softwares as well. So before installing GNS3, we must ensure that we have installed all the other softwares because the working of GNS3 depends upon the other softwares. This includes Dynamics, Dynagen, Python, Wireshark. I've explained about Dynamics and Dynagen already. Wireshark is basically a tool which helps us to capture packets and then look at the packets. GNS3 is also used for emulating different hardwares, and it emulates large number of hardwares. Mainly it is for Cisco routers. The router starting from 1700 series to 7200 series can be emulated using GNS3. That is, you can make the router and you can configure them to work in the way you want it. GNS3 is used for emulating Cisco Catalyst switches. It's used for emulating the PIX firewalls, the ASA firewalls, the sensors, as well as the Juniper routers. Juniper routers and Cisco routers are almost the same. So there's no much difference between them as long as the functioning is in the picture. This is how a GNS3 screen looks like. As you can see on the left hand side over here, you have images of all the routers. Here you can see C3725, C7200. These are the iOS images of the routers, and you can use these routers to create your own networks. You can also see the frame relay, the Ethernet hub, the Ethernet switch, and all the other things over here. On the left hand side, you can also see at the bottom the link. This link is used to make connection between different routers. Over here you see 6 routers and a switch we are connected to each other. This is kind of like a lab where you can see that all the interfaces are up. What you can do is you can go into each router and you can configure IP address on the interfaces. You can configure any routing protocols, or you can do whatever you want to create a network of your choice. And basically whenever a router or a switch boots up, it looks for an iOS image, and based on the iOS image you'll get to know what router or switch it was. Initially when you're using GNS3, you won't be having any of these images, so I'd suggest you to download the image or get the image from somewhere, and then while booting you need to give the iOS image so that the router boots up with the image that you wanted. The setup is given as shown in the PPT. Here, in order to control any router or switch, you need to go to the router's console or the switch console. Basically, the console can be viewed using any third-party software such as Putty. So all you have to do is go to the router, make a right click and click on the console bar. Here you can see that the console bar of the router R5. This shows how the router has booted up and how you can use the router. This is basically the console screen of any router or switch in GNS3. GNS3 also allows Wireshark for packet capturing. This will help you to analyze the network, how the network is working, and if you're using any routing protocols, how the messages are being exchanged between the routers. And you can also check different type of traffic using the Wireshark. The output for the Wireshark capture is as shown here. So you can see that in the previous one, if we had used the OSPF routing protocol, you can see that the hello packets are being exchanged between the routers, and the echo request, echo reply, ICMPs, everything as shown in the figure. The GNS3 has its own disadvantages as well. The first one being that since GNS3 is basically only a simulator, you'll never get the idea of how the actual hardware looked like. For example, in Cisco, the 1700 series router and the 7200 series router looks the same in GNS3. But in actual, the capability as well as the appearance of the two routers are completely different. And you also have modular chassis as well, which in actual is a very complex structure, but in GNS3 you won't get much idea. Anyhow, the connections could be made easily using mouse clicks. And the second disadvantage is that the GNS3 auto adjusts the type of cable that is being used to connect different devices. For example, if you want to connect two same devices such as two routers or two switches, we always prefer crossover cables. And if we want to connect two separate devices, in that case we prefer straight through cables. But over here there's no such thing as crossover or straight through. All we have to do is just connect using the link between two devices, and it will auto adjust itself. If the devices are of the same type, the cable will be a crossover one, otherwise it's gonna be a straight cable. And GNST routers and switches also have very slow hardware and software processing speed. The actual router are very costly obviously, and that's why they have a very high processing speed. And since GNS3 is only a simulator, you cannot relate the speed of a GNS3 router to the one with the actual router, because actual routers work very fast and they're very efficient when compared to GNS3. So now I'm gonna start with downloading and installation of GNS3 module. The first thing that you need to do is go to www.gns3.net, which is the network site for GNS3, and download it. GNS3 is available for both Windows as well as Mac, and it's also available for Ubuntu Linux. So first I'm gonna go to the given website. We also need to download the iOS images or get it from somewhere else, so that while booting up we can give the proper iOS image based on how we want it. Okay, here I'm on the home page of GNS3. Initially you need to sign up, you need to make an account in GNS3, and then you'll have the access to get the GNS3. So click on free download. You can see that GNS3 is available for Windows, Linux as well as Macs. Since I'm using Windows, I'm going to go for the Windows download then. Okay, we get a message that our download has been started at, and you can see on the left bottom that the download has started. This file is quite big, it's around 43 MB, and it takes some time to download.